Well, welcome everybody to the February edition, February 2026 edition of Lakeside Chat. I'm realizing as I'm saying February edition that this is now the third February. David, this is the second February you've been on as the special guest. So we live in a world where I can't just say February anymore. We've been doing these so long that there's too many Februarys to count. We've got a really good, obviously we've got an amazing guests on for today, people that I know that many of you, if you know me or if you know the world of HR, especially locally, you've probably seen their faces along the way because their genius is I feel fortunate that I have them in my circle. Can I say that I can lean into them as resources when I have questions or when I need witty banter and the world seems bleak and I need perspective. I've got people like David and Kate to lean into. So I'm so very glad and gracious that you guys could be here with me again today.
Oh, she froze.
Lakeside HR Group, as many of you know. And so the vein of work is something that we're
I feel like we should make this a drinking game, David.
Right. Well, I just have coffee. That's no fun. I mean, I guess I can just use that.
Yeah, that's okay. As soon as
Lord.
you give us a topic, we'll just take her away and you can lock up as many times as you want.
Okay, well, if my internet goes out, I'm just going to blow my nose and you all just have to deal with it. So that's fine by me. Perfect. Well, we're going to jump in. I'm going to do the quick front end stuff so that I don't forget. I recognize that with 100 plus people registering today, we're going to have some newbies on. So I want to just sort of kick off with the idea of basic rules of engagement for a way of Lakeside Chat runs. For anyone that's been on before, you know that these are very underproduced, as we've just already witnessed, events. And so I talk about these because this is a recorded session. So I want to make sure, as you know, these are recorded. These will be available for people to download later if you want to. So Kate, you and I need to watch our mouths. And the rest of us can sort of just know that the chat will be a part of it. Just kidding, Kate, you be you.
I don't ever apologize.
No. The rest of the room, I want to just kind of call out the fact that we want to strongly encourage that you engage throughout. Use the chat feature. You'll notice that we'll engage you with questions throughout the conversation as well. Respond, connect with people that you haven't met or call out people that you haven't seen in a while. This is a place of community, and so we're excited about having that, and we want to use the Teams features to do that. We also want to make sure that we stay positive and stay in a space of genuine curiosity. I don't think David, Kate, or I recognize that we are the foremost authority on all things, that we are just three voices talking about some stuff. And so the goal here is really just information sharing and conversation starting. With that, I want to just also do a quick call out to my two guest hosts, which I realize I know you very well, so I often just minimize how great you are. So I'm going to just have you introduce yourselves because I don't like big, grandiose ways of communicating. So David, do you want to just introduce yourself and talk a little bit?
Sounds good. Yeah, David Gramer with Prism Comp Consulting. We're in the Twin Cities here. Been in business for 8 years now. Absolutely love what I do for a living, so definitely love these chats and also loving hearing from the audience because, again, yeah, more voices, the better as far as what's happening out there in the workforce.
All right, then I'm going to hope that people can hear me. I apologize that my world is not liking me. Kate, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Kate Bischoff. I suffer from law degree. I have had my own business for 9.5 years this month, doing consulting work in HR and legal.
Perfect. Well, hopefully y'all can hear me through the rest of this. So I'm just going to keep talking and fill in any blanks that you feel like you need to fill in. Dave, Kate, you guys got me. Lakeside HR Group, just so you guys know who's producing this on the other side of it. As I mentioned, I'm the director of business development here at Lakeside HR Group. I've been with the company a little over 2 years. We are in our 5th year as a business. We are an organization that is here to strengthen small to mid-sized businesses through personalized recruiting and HR consulting. We live with the mindset of really 4 values that drive us every single day. We are genuine, we are curious, we are scrappy, going to be a true testament to that, and we are value adders. And so that is the point of coming and why we created Lakeside Chats was as an opportunity to show off those 4 values in lots of different ways, and why we want to make sure we're bringing the team and the group people here together. In addition, because, you know, in the vein of all things scrappy, we don't sit still. So a 5-year-old business also needed to add another business line, or at least recognize a need that where there was one. And so last year, Lakeside became the premier sponsor of an organization called Radiate People, which I've been behind the scenes sort of leading along with Kristen here at Lakeside. Radiate People is a membership-based community for those people that have made the commitment to being a solopreneur. So if you want to learn more, I'll send it in the follow-up materials as well, but just want to make sure you know that these are the 2 sort of front-end sponsors for what we're doing with Lakeside Chats. But with that, we're going to jump right in. And I promised to the team here that this is the lamest slide deck you'll ever see, because really all we're going to do is talk and add conversation to everyone here. When the 3 of us met and did prep work for this particular event, we talked about the concept of the future of work. And we look backwards to sort of recognize where we're moving forwards to. And we were joking about everything from Kate and I, when we talked 2 years ago, we were predicting 4-day work weeks and all sorts of other things. We recognized that virtual work and remote work was becoming a wave of the future, especially post-COVID. And so the first question to get everyone talking today is, where are you? Where are you working from today? Are you at your home office? Are you at your home? Are you at your work office? Are you in your foyer like Kate is? Where are you working today? Is our first question. And it's really with the idea, as we think about the future of work, we recognize the where and when people are working is changing. David, you're going to answer the question first. Where are you working today? And then give me some guideposts, because I know that this is a new change for you.
Yeah, no, indeed. So I am in the office today. We did open up an office this year, and it has been so different. Just the look and feel coming into the office has been really interesting, having worked from home for the last 10 plus years. But it was nice. Reason why I came into the office is my dogs would have interrupted us, and so would probably my kids. So, that's why I made the decision to come in for sure today.
Yeah. Kate, how about you? Where are you today?
This is my dining room table. It's a standard Southern Minneapolis architecture right back here. Yeah, this is where I give almost every presentation, but work is, I go wherever I am, including this year, I'll be working from Greece.
Anytime Kate can find an opportunity to bust out travel or rubbing it in.
Yep.
It's a recurring theme.
Well, Becky, see, like Becky says she's mentally in the Bahamas. I think we should, get to places, like be in the places, right?
Yeah.
So
I'm gonna jump into Becky's office and see how warm it is in there and see if I can practically see her around the corner. Well, I think this concept, I want to just sort of bring it up, right? Because of the idea of where and when people are working has been a topic of conversation. Kate, I want to go back to the prediction back in 2024 of the 4-day work week and the evolution that we've seen from there. What would you, if you have to go back to Kate of Christmas past, what would she say to the prediction of a 4-day work week now?
I think you're still right, but you're way ahead of the time. I think, I say that knowing that, we've studied the 4-day work week now. There are entire countries that have moved to it, and it's more productive. People are more happy, all of those things. It's just the US right now is not in a mindset that would allow us to think that way.
Yeah. No, I think that's a fair statement. And so can I ask my worldly friend as well, is that a US consideration, or is that a world, is there a component to what's happening outside of the US that we need to take into consideration there?
I think we will eventually we'll take the research out of Iceland and we'll say, oh, that would be really great if we could do it. And I think some organizations will, But right now, I think everyone is just heads down, and with the exception of another topic we'll talk about in a minute, everyone is head down just trying to get through this economy. And so taking wild views of going to a 4-day work week isn't in the cards right now. When we can breathe, I think we will take it in. I mean, and I say that knowing that HR has not breathed since March 9th of 2020. So I say that with that caveat, but I think once we can lift our head a little bit and not just trying to make it through just to survive, I think we will look out and say, oh, maybe that is a really good idea, because look at how much better people in Iceland are.
David, I want to, from your lens, from the comp lens, right? So this concept of even let's go to this 4-day work week. I mean, I just like the idea of us being able to breathe. I think that sounds great. So let's just start with the idea of being able to breathe. But if you look at it through your lens, when I think of the comp structure piece of it, and we think of the where and when people are working, are you seeing any shift of where conversations are going in terms of how people are thinking about how they're compensating people, or how they're talking about or leveraging where and when they work in that comp structure?
So I think it's a great point, especially as you think about the whole remote hybrid on-site. And hybrid, of course, is continuing to be the prevalent one, but it's a pendulum. And I think being able to offer those, I'll call it non-traditional working models, because it still isn't quite there yet, right? Like Kate said,
Yeah.
That's a competitive differentiator, and people will seek that out as part of your total rewards package. So if you do have a culture or an environment that's willing to accept that, you are ahead of the game and can continue to use that to your advantage, especially as that pendulum continues to go back to hybrid and, dare I say, on-site, fully on-site work. So I do encourage cultures, if you can, consider that. There was a long part of discussion about, do you have to pay more if you work different hours? Meaning, if you force people to be on site or force people to work core hours. There was a lot of rumors going around that there's been a flow on market data saying you pay more. I haven't seen that yet, but I do think you do have a retraction and retention problem if you don't adopt some of these non-traditional things that frankly people look for and are looking for.
Yeah.
Kate, anything you'd add to that?
I would say we know from just pure statistical data that the groups that are impacted the most by return to work happen to be women and people of color. Black women in particular are out of the workforce in massive droves. I think by the end of January, we lost 300,000 Black women, or January, like 2025, like not even just this year, but like so many Black women are opting out of the workforce, whether through their own decision or through a corporate decision. But when you are working from home, you don't have the same microaggressions that happen by the water cooler, right? And so there's a lot of safety in working from home from that perspective as well that I think we should touch on for a hot second, at least.
I think that's a fair statement. I want to just sort of call out that plus the generational component too, right? There's two sides to that equation. And I feel like this conversation of where the work is being done is in terms of also the idea of how you're learning to do the work, right? There's this sort of two-sided equation of, yes, you might get the loveliness of working from home, but if you never have the ability to work around your peers, to learn from your peers, what is the impact that that's having as well? And so again, I look at it through two lenses, and I appreciate the idea that we're thinking about it through the diversity lens, but I think diversity
about it. I don't think it's anything we needed to know, and I think it's something
people talking.
John to
I don't know who that is.
people working on it right now.
Who's talking?
Well,
We're having a day, man.
Right.
This is fun.
I think you're onto something there, Aaron, and to what Kate said in
Why
that
would he get 1099?
there was
the interest we pay him.
Somebody's talking about 1099s. It's the
Well,
best time
well,
of year, baby.
that's
I
exciting.
looked at it and
Item. Oh,
No,
you got
so
it. Got it.
you're right, Kate. There was a fantastic, like I was joking, statistical analysis that was done. And I think I'm a geek, and this article went further as far as statistics goes, and it proved everything that we believe to be true. People are more stressed if you force them to come in the office. There's work burnout. They don't feel like they have as much of a work-life balance. So all the thing is true. So I think it keeps on coming back to how do you balance more of a, it's probably going to be in a hybrid model at the end of the day. So you do allow people to work from home and receive those benefits. But then also, when you do bring people in the office, make sure it's for the right reasons and learning those things together. Because some of the things you hear about is, yeah, I'm forced to come in the office, but everybody else is gone. And so that doesn't really give you any benefit to forcing people into the office if you don't leverage some of those in-person interactions.
Yeah, and the other piece, like, I have lots of opinions about the EEOC today, but even this EEOC is saying, hey, you can't have a blanket, they all have to come back to the work office, because you have disability considerations for it. And definitely not for the bagels, but like you have disability discrimination issues that you're going to have to figure out as well. So like, it's not just a rampant, like, let's all come back to the office because we've been paying for all of the square footage in a downtown area. It is, we have to be really deliberate and intentional about what that means. So,
Yeah. David, I know the request for that article is in the, so if you can remind, I'll follow up with you to make sure we get it in the follow-up material as well. So this is great. And Kate, if you have anything on the EEOC that we can share too, I think that would be great to sort of
that
bring
just
that.
came out the last couple of days. So
That would be awesome. I would love to be able to share both of those. And Becky, you put a night one in there as well with regards to the generational shift. So thank you. All right, let's move on. I want to sort of, I think this is a good conversation. And I think to your point, Kate, I think some of this is going to spread over into other parts of the conversation today. All right, so here's the next question for the room. All right, so the next future of work conversation, and Kate had me already up at 6 o'clock this morning reading articles. So the conversation around AI, right? So we had the recognition, I think a couple months ago, we did an event on AI in the vein of HR, right? Talking about making sure that we're considering bias and considering, but we also recognize that everybody's using it, and that AI has become more of a norm than even than maybe we would even have anticipated so quickly. So my question for those of you in the room, just to get your creative juices growing, is: have you given your AI a name? And if so, what is the name of your AI friend? Thank you, Kate, for posting that. Mine is Chad. I have inappropriate jokes, but I'm going to leave it there. Kate, David, do you guys give your AI friends a name? No, I figured. Kate, I knew the answer to that answer without going.
Nope.
I don't use AI. So, yeah. Oh, she froze. I'm going to take this opportunity to explain why I don't. One, I'm an environmentalist. My house is on wind. I drive an EV. I'm really worried about water. So that's number one. Two, MIT did a study that found that 97% of organizations are not getting out of AI what they want to, which is an absolutely stunning failure of AI. Three, AI is based on biased data. No matter how much natural language you send it, it always believes that a man is the protector and the leader, and women are the work of the homeowner, homemaker, etc., because all of our data is so lost. And then four, we have a new case out of the Southern District of New York that all of your prompts that you put into your AI are discoverable, which means if you're asking AI to write a policy for you or do analysis of whether or not this termination is risky, all of that comes out in discovery and litigation. It is not protected by attorney-client privilege. And so if you are feeding into your, whatever you've named it, Fred, I don't care, all of that is discoverable, which creates a huge risk for any organization who's been using AI for those kinds of documents or those kinds of analysis. So I'll hop off my soapbox.
Well, I think you're onto something too. And organizations and talent in general continue to use AI as, I'll use the word crutch, right? I mean, it shouldn't replace critical thinking. It shouldn't replace research. It should maybe be supportive if you choose to use it, but I don't think it can replace those things. I think that's a very risky situation where I hope we're not heading that way. The other thing too is some of the fear that we're seeing that AI is going to replace jobs. I don't believe that's also coming true either as far as some of the statistics. Again, you can hear some things that some companies are reducing workforce because of AI, but that I think I heard it's because they didn't adopt AI. But so I think it is just a thing that's going to continue to evolve, continue to change. But again, the current state we're in, I think AI is still a little risky if that is your only source of analysis, so to speak.
Yeah,
I think that's great. I know. Go ahead,
and
Kate. You
and
needed to.
in a couple weeks ago, we did like I think this came out on February 5th, that one of the big analysis companies, Challenger Gray and Christmas, they were published in RenMac, and it said there's been quite a bit of attention on AI driving layoffs, but most of the reasons cited in the data for why we're doing layoffs is really restructuring, economic conditions, and tariffs. That AI itself is not necessarily driving the layoffs themselves.
Let's go back to that, because I think that concept of the rifts and the conversation around AI being the catalyst for layoffs or decisions for layoffs. Kate, David, have you seen anything in that space? Because again, I think about it through the comp conversation as well, has to come up.
We'll definitely see a lot of pressure on data analytics, AI related jobs. I mean, it's the things ebb and flow as new skills hit the market. But I think every other day a client is asking me for data engineering, data analytics information. So they're definitely leaning into the space. But I would argue we probably should be doing that from day one. I mean, you've had things like Lean Six Sigma and other quality systems and controls that are out there. I think this is just kind of the next wave of how do you use information effectively to help drive your business. And some of those things may lead to just generally efficiencies, but I don't think it's AI to blame necessarily, but AI is definitely pushing the needle when it comes to using data to make decisions. There's one big thing I'm seeing.
Yeah, I mean, I think Kate, you've sparked a nerve, I think, from a lot of people in the chat as well, in terms of how. No, I think it's good. Don't make that face. I think it's a good conversation, and I think it's this concept of if it's easy. I think there's this blend, right? Of this is sometimes if something feels easy, forget there's this downward implications of it. And AI has, and I'm as guilty of it as anyone, right? Like I feel like there's a degree of it does feel easy. It is when I'm a team of one, right? Sometimes having a thought partner, to, if nothing else, get some sort of reaction feedback that sounds intelligent, feels supportive and feels like it guides my direction. Now, to your point, David, it shouldn't be the decision, the analysis component, but there is an element of this concept of easy. So can I ask for, like, in your guys' world or in your mindset, what's the right use? Is there a right use for where AI should be used or leveraged right now?
Oof, that's a good question. I always think AI.
Sorry, this is not in the prep call.
No, you taught me a good one there. No, I think it goes back to validation, right? If you've done your homework and you've done your work and came up with what you believe directionally the right answer might be for a particular decision, I mean, that's critical thinking, right? I think, God forbid, forgive me, if critical thinking ever leaves our workforce, well, then what's going to happen? So I think you have to still do that work. But then you can use AI to kind of reflect and say, geez, did I miss something? Is there something I didn't think about when I did this? To kind of just as a counterbalance. But again, going back to, if we continue to use AI, what's going to happen to people out of college, right? I mean, where are they going to learn their critical skills or critical thinking? And I shared this in a different session. In some colleges, you're expelled if you use AI. And so it's really interesting how that is the next technology. And usually you look to the younger generation to kind of bring that through the workforce. Whereas when they're currently in school, they're being told not to use that. So they're going to hit the workforce arguably not AI capable, when all of a sudden your business might be looking that direction. I think that's going to be interesting as far, again, how that continues to unfold.
Yeah, I am very leery. I don't want you using AI to make any employment decisions for a particular employee. So if you are looking at using AI in hiring, you have built-in bias in it. The Workday lawsuit, which I posted some news about that from December. The Workday lawsuit that Workday has been forced to turn over all of its clients that have been using its AI in recruitment tool, which means that, oh my God, if you've been using Workday, you are going to get a lawsuit for employment discrimination because Workday's tool has been how you used it. So while I don't want you doing it for any particular decision related to a singular or singular group of employees, I don't think it's necessarily horrific to use it as a jumping off point to get your juices flowing. So like I use Google searches all the time for like, what is the trend? What are people using this for? And then I do my own analysis after. And so like, I think it's okay to use it as that jumping off point, but as long as you understand it is a tool and you are the one responsible for what you use it for. There's no way Workday is going to be wholly responsible for its AI. You made the decision on who to hire. And if you made the decision on who to hire, you're liable for it, regardless of how much you use the tool. That might be different in states like Minnesota that have an aiding and abetting statute, but you know, the tool is just the tool. You have to train and make sure your people understand that, and in some cases ignore it.
All right, Kate, I want to go back to the Harvard article, my reading this morning at 6 a.m. Can you talk a little bit about I think the one thing that I read from it was that concept of it's actually creating more work. I think there's this element that we think with AI, that AI is the thing that's going to take away work or make work easier. And that Harvard article, the one thing I really thought was really interesting was that we're seeing a surge in the amount of work that's coming out of it.
Yeah, the one thing that I take out of it is that it leads to that work creep, that you end up going into later hours, that you have to double check it. And so that creates more of that work. There's cognitive fatigue, burnout, weekend decision making. All of those things are wrapped up. And the article is in the chat already if you all want to look at it. It came out on the 9th. So just last week, about the analysis of what the impact of it has been. So I think that is, I know I am a negative Nancy when it comes to AI. I know that I have adopted that perspective. I am a lawyer. I'm negative by trade. But I really want people to understand the risks associated with it, and not, this is a purple squirrel that HR folks have been searching for. We're constantly searching for. You just can't you have to step back and be critical of it whenever you use it for a variety of reasons. But
and there was other articles that were talking about too, CEOs' priorities for 26, and that AI and the use of AI is one of their top priorities. Of how do they then integrate this into their business? Yet the flip side was, how ready are managers and employees to do this? It was a huge disconnect. So you have someone at the top trying to say, we got to use it, because people, like you said, Kate, don't know how to use it effectively and maybe get themselves into a bind. So it is a risk, definitely, in terms of how do you manage that as an organization, and HR is going to be obviously put front and center, and how do we do this along with other disciplines too.
Yeah. I mean, if you're using AI in finance, okay, I get it. You're using AI in finance. But in human resources, remember, human is the first part of our work. So like that has a different level of impact because we're dealing with people.
All right. We've got 2 other topics we want to cover today, and I want to make sure we get there. And I think this is great. And I think I think the conversation both in the chat as well as here is perfect. So I want to just make sure we're leaning to the next one. I made a horrible joke for the last quarter of the year that I should have had a bottle of tequila sitting behind me for every single time I had to say the word leave. Like I had to take a shot the first time, every time. I didn't really do it. I think my boss is on, so Kristen knew I wasn't drinking tequila shots throughout the workday. But I want to sort of lean into this conversation where we recognize the future of work has really been changed pretty dramatically, in my opinion, in terms of what's happened with regards to leave policies. We're now in a place where leave is being managed in a much different way, and is being looked at and through a different lens from a benefits perspective as well. So my question for the room, have you talked about leave yet today? Have you had your first shot of tequila when it comes to mentioning leave today? And I realize that's maybe a terrible joke. And for those of you that are not nearly as connected to all the things happening from a regulatory perspective, doesn't nearly maybe seem as funny to you. But to me, it felt like every single day for the last quarter, if I was on a call with anybody in HR, any small business owner, the conversation around leave management became at least a part of the conversation. And so thank you, Steve. So David, Kate, I want to sort of lean in, and actually let's start with you, David. I want to sort of lean into the idea of leave through the lens of total rewards, right? We've talked about it now as this conversation is sort of, PTO policies and time off and, sick versus vacation time has always been an element of a comp package, right? Of a total comp package. What are you seeing in the conversations you're having when it comes to how the policies and the regulatory changes are impacting those dialogues from a total rewards package?
Great question. And coming out of COVID, I always say we felt like work life was. And so most employees don't want to lose sight of that feeling. So leaves and how you manage leaves has been increasingly important. And yes, time off, sick time, and things like that are some of the programs you use. But what I sort of been seeing is as some of these plans that have been more mandated, like parental leave, obviously Minnesota leave, that maybe other organizations use to differentiate themselves from the marketplace. As things are being regulated into how do you continue to differentiate yourself and saying that's part of my culture. I believe that was important long before regulation came. Now I've lost that. So we're seeing a lot of things on the benefit front, what I call them optional programs. So things like paid for school activities, paid for certain types of medical treatment, just other leave days that are called out in your program that are above and beyond traditional vacation and sick, but are used for certain things. That continues to reinforce your culture and how you believe your employees should have these time available for them, as opposed to using the PTO or the mandated time off. So I think that is a great way of, again, if that's part of your culture and who you are, lean into some of those because it will send a different message beyond just the regulation. And again, that goes true for any type of optional plan, you name it, but especially in time off.
Yeah. Kate, from a legal lens, are you seeing changes? I think I'm at Lakeside, we have a consulting team, right? And so they have a consulting teams channel that they're talking to each other all day, every day. And one of the conversations like I think January 1st was this like, should we turn some of the fraudulent claims into a drinking game as to when we're starting to and paying attention to not just what's happening in our own backyard here in Minnesota, but what's happening in other states as well. So Kate, I'm curious from your lens, from a legal perspective, where are you starting to see, I'm going to say like chinks in the armor, sort of like where are you starting to see where there are obstacles when it comes to the new leave policy changes?
Well, there are within the first month of 2026, the first month that it was eligible, 38,000 people applied for leave in the state of Minnesota under the paid family leave program, which is a lot. On average, we have about 10,000 people a month. But I'm going to say for January, February, and March, we're going to have a whole lot of people that are now entitled to this because they had a baby last year. And so by April, or by the end of April, at least, we should be close to normalizing the amount of people who are out on leave. Okay. So I think, we will end that part. And in this transition period, it's going to feel a little different. I'm really proud of how well DEED is doing in handling these. They have identified fraud. They have already said no to a big group of people who are trying to fraudulently obtain leave, which I'm really proud of. I think DEED has done a Herculean effort in learning from the other states of where there have been problems to try to reduce those problems here in this state. So I'm not and definitely not a negative Nancy on this. Where I am a negative Nancy is I think the private programs, the Lincoln Financial, the Hartford, the Unums, whoever you're using on as an insurance to handle the stuff instead of the state, I think by year 3, they won't be able to keep up with the cost of it. And many organizations will be moving to the state program. And when you buy the insurance program, you're buying their ability to process it. So, because if we have to grant the leave regardless. How they get paid is going to be paid by the private insurer or the state. If the private insurer screws up the payment, that's my fault. It's not their fault, it's my fault. I am responsible for that. But if the state screws up that payment, guess who's the problem? The state. So isn't that just an amazing benefit? Like I've bought the problems that this company does. Now I'm an employment attorney. I only see problems, right? When I was litigating, I only saw how many times the Hartford screwed up a FMLA processing. I only saw how many times it got goofed up, and it's not zero. So to the extent that you're buying liability somewhere else, that I think that was a risk. And I don't think anyone was talking about it at the time. But the state, if the state screws that up, your employees got to go to the state. Like that's the best possible solution. You're out of that decision making entirely. I think that's a huge, huge benefit. Where I see, to David's point, I think what the legislation on this is, it gave small and middle-sized businesses the opportunity to compete with UHG, Target, 3M, who were paying for parts of these leaves. Like now your talent pool is so different because the same amount of leave or similar, you now can use that to your advantage of being a small employer. And I think that's a huge benefit. So I'm not super negative on this. I think what we're trying to do is make it so people can focus on where things are most important with their families, with themselves, etc. I think that's a good thing. I understand the day-to-day operational hard, headaches that this creates. I get that. But I think ultimately the purpose of this is a good thing and will be a good thing both business-wise because of that increased talent pool and for our people. So
Yeah. David, I'm curious because I think the one thing I love that perspective, Kate, because I think it gives a different slant for the small to mid-sized business, right? I think so many people sort of saw the leave policy come down, or some, sick, even starting back with sick and safe, right? That this concept I make a terrible joke regularly about, for many years there was like this white flag of ignorance if you were under 50 employees, right? You just didn't particularly have a ton of rules that you were required to follow, and sick and safe sort of changed the game that way. So I like this lens of being able to think about it through the idea that it puts this it sort of neutralizes competitive pool for the talent market, because I do think that's a slant that I don't think many saw through that lens.
Mhm.
David, with the companies you're talking to, is that what, are they seeing it that way as well? Or what's been the reaction, and sort of, are they starting to recognize that there's ways for them to use this to their advantage?
That's a good question. So when we do total reward studies for smaller companies, one of the things we saw before is short-term disability either not being offered or being offered at very low rates. And so I think it was a competitive miss for a lot of smaller companies. It just maybe it was outside their mind, or they were focusing on other things. But you're right, to Kate, it does level the playing field where it is mandated. So I think at the end of the day, it's probably something smaller companies should have been offering at as part of their package, total rewards wise, but with the regulation, it does force it. And a lot of them were thinking about putting in a short-term disability plan, but they said, I want to wait and see what happens here. And so now that it came out, they why would I put in a plan? It's basically the same thing. So,
Yeah. Well, good. Thanks, you guys. I think that's an interesting, again, I appreciate it because I think it does take a much more positive stance on what this could have been. And I think it also is recognizing, to your point, Kate, that we now have at least some degree of information to show how it's being run, right? I think before there was the sky is falling, mindset, because there was this unpredictable component. We were talking about it for nearly 2 years. How is this going to be executed? Is it going to get pushed down the road? Is government going to be prepared for it? And now we're a month and a half in, and we're seeing that like this guy didn't fall. Like we're Chicken Little is losing his mind. We're different mindset here. All right, so let's lean in, and I'm going to call this out because I'm looking at the time and I'm recognizing we have one big topic we're going to talk about at the end that I think sort of bleeds back to some of the other ones. But if for those of you that are on too, if there's other topics you want us to talk about, or if you want to add topics too in terms of future of work, bring it into the chat thread, and I'll watch for that to come through. The last topic we're going to talk about that we had prepped to talk about was the concept of loyalty. This teams, as I've been reading articles and thinking about the sort of future of work, especially if we use the history of work to sort of guide the future of work, is this conversation around loyalty. And so the question to those of you that are here with me today is, how long have you been with your current employer? And what's the longest you've ever worked for one employer? So I just want to sort of use those two questions out there. I'll keep the slide deck up here for a little bit. I think when I brought this up to you both during the prep call, we both had this sort of like aha moment, like, yep, loyalty is this conversation. And it's, David, I think when we had talked about it, you sort of talked about it through two different lenses, right? This concept of employees being loyal to their employers, but really our employers being loyal to their employees. And so, David, you want to take that conversation right out the gate as we're watching people to come through here?
Yeah, I think it's definitely been a two-way street, and I think employers sort of woke up a little bit when that pendulum swung back to the employee side of the equation, where you didn't have the power anymore. And so then it was, how do I create that loyalty with my employees? And so you've heard, especially last several years, culture is the way most employers are leaning on, or engagement. Some of the using those areas to say, how do I build that bridge, which will lead to loyalty? And so I think employees are trying, or hopefully trying, to see that and recognize that and impact your tenure. Now, the flip side of that is, when there's been some recent layoffs, that employers live up to that statement. And so all the work they put into culture and engagement may have been destroyed just by some unfortunate layoffs and how they was approached. So, yeah.
Amen, my friend.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
All right. Well, okay. So I think I want to just call out a couple things, and when you're getting a preach from Lisa in the chat as well, David. So thank you for that. I think it's interesting as I look through, and I recognize the audience that I attract here too. But I recognize there's a lot of longevity in terms of people looking at how long they were at their longest, right? I think if I have to sort of give a gauge, we're seeing about a 7 to 10 year range that certain people have stayed with employers for a long time. So loyalty isn't dead, right? It did exist, right? I think within our current workforce, the workforce that we have, there's a number of people that recognize what loyalty looks like, working for 5+, 7+, 10+ years. But I'm also seeing the trend, if I'm looking at it from the other side, that there's a lot of people that are with their current company for less than 3. So Kate, from your lens, as I look at it through David's final preach comment there in terms of how RIFs were handled, let's talk about it through this culture perspective in terms of the loyalty from employer. Let's do the employer to employee piece first, just because that's sometimes where you get brought in, is this concept of how is the RIF being handled, when is an investigation needed, and kind of what does that loyalty conversation look at from your lens?
Well, so I want to call out 2 RIFs. Target fucked that thing up royally. Like, unbelievably horrible way of doing a RIF. I represent little companies, no more than 3,000 employees. Okay. Like, that's the cap. I will not represent anybody with that more employees than that. And every one of them agonizes over doing a reduction in force, not necessarily because their employees are family, but because they want to do the right thing. Then these big ass motherfuckers, and yes, I don't mind saying the target is this, do it so horribly. Like, these people over a weekend going, what is it? Am I one of the 1,000 that's going to be let go from, like, to create that much anxiety was surely a symbol of, we want to let so many more people go, but if we do this riff horribly, they'll all figure out that we're bad and we'll go away. Like, that is just how badly Target did that, whether it was intentional or not. Like, that was the worst executed riff I have ever heard of in my career. And it just makes all of my little guys look bad. And they're not bad. My little guys are great. So like, I I am offended every time. I am offended when a company does a riff poorly. From a loyalty perspective, I did a Disrupt HR talk maybe 5-6 years ago about how loyalty is bullshit, and that it doesn't necessarily exist in lots of ways, and that it's much more important to be aligned to the values of the organization than it is to be aligned, like, and to be critical. Like, are we living our values every time? It was in a little bit of a different context. It was Disrupt Brookings. I went to Brookings, South Dakota on a favor to do that one. What I will say is that from the employer to the employee, we have invested not only a lot of money, but a lot of time and resources. To the extent we want to keep our people, because we have done that, is to make sure that our people understand what value we're giving and what value they bring. And that means talking to them about their value and talking to them about what the future looks like, and more transparency. And I think that will be the key to making sure that employees feel like we're loyal, and that employees will be loyal to us. Like, it's not uncommon for one of my clients to go, "We're having a lot of financial trouble. This is what our financial outlook looks like. This is where we're having issues," and, being that transparent with teams to say, "Hey, a riff might be in our future. We're going to do everything to avoid it." But I think that means that people understand the importance and the value they have toward the organization. And just the communication is so valuable to employees as well.
No,
All right,
definitely.
go ahead, David. I was
Real
gonna
quick
go a different
follow up.
angle, but take it.
And you're so right. I mean, you've heard me say probably that coming out of COVID, the idea of job security, people weren't scared anymore. Before COVID, job security was the number one thing they wanted, which is kind of sad, right? But coming out of COVID, it went away. Like, I survived COVID, I can survive anything. And people changed jobs, the job market became more fluid, and a lot of positive things came out of it as people changed roles, new blood introduced, things like that. Last year, job security came back as number one. And again, it's so sad to see that people are, when they come in, they work for security. I get that. You have food, shelter, clothing. But what about, Maslow's hierarchy of need and self-actualization and being, recognized as a person, all the things you just talked about, right? So it just reinforces the scales of how important it is for employers to do that. You don't want people coming to work just so they have a job. You want them coming to work so they contribute, right, and perform. And then you talk about performance management, and it just snowballs from there. So sorry, it hit a nerve, Kate. I had to add that in too.
No, that's an appropriate nerve, because I do think, I like the idea that we're using data points to tell that story too, right? That the idea of what do employees want. I did conversations around the quiet firing, quiet, all the quiet trends that were happening, and that's exactly it. Security could just mean I'm staying here. I'm just going to quietly continue to work and hope that I'm quietly protected too, right? And that's the other half of it, that we want to make sure that we're not losing that part of it as well. I want to go back to the other side of it, because I think when I think of even some of the conversations we were talking about from an AI lens, and the how companies would filter or search, right? I sit in the recruiting space and have conversations with companies regularly that are looking to add to their headcount, right? And having that early conversation and what their ideal client, prospect client or employee might look like. And loyalty gets brought up, right? The idea of wanting to look at prospective hires with an idea of how long have they been with their prior. I don't want people that have bounced around. I don't want. I want to know that that they have loyalty in their background. That still hasn't dropped from the conversations that we're having from an employer lens. So I want to talk about this sort of bleeding conversation of where these two parts come together, right? This idea of using the data that comes on a resume, right? Being able to look at, and then recognizing that this conversation around loyalty is a two-sided street, right? There's two pieces of the conversation, and I'm not really sure where I'm taking this, but I'm curious to know what your guys' reactions to that when we're thinking about the hiring practice, and using loyalty as a guide from a hiring practice. Kate, you want to take it?
Sure. I don't look at, okay, so first of all, I'm working for myself for the past 9.5 years. This is the longest I've ever worked for one employer. Okay. The longest I think I worked for an employer prior to that was 5 years, but I was a law clerk and then a lawyer. And that was the longest ever. Mostly because I'm unmanageable. So let's just all be clear about that. I'm unmanageable. But I will say, when my clients ask me, should we pay attention to this? Or, she's only been there, we shouldn't necessarily consider her. My response is that is irrelevant to whether or not someone is going to be good in this job. I'd much rather care about, do we think they have the skills, knowledge, and abilities to do the job? And why do they want to come to us? And do we feel that the answer that they're giving to us is genuine? Do we think our values align? Do we think all of those things? And to Teresa's point, asking what the candidate's story is incredibly important. I don't think we should write off anybody who's only been with an organization for, 6 months. I don't think we necessarily write them off, because this could be their dream job, right? I have a very good friend who has been eyeing this one company for so long that she would be the perfect hire, but she feels like a stalker saying, I've been waiting for this job to be open for forever. And like, I think we need to take it not as a blanket statement that anybody who's working for an organization less than 2 years should be taken off. I think it's much more important to do the individualized analysis, in my legal jargon, to find out that story instead.
Yeah. David, what would you add?
No, yeah, I think there's reason why people stay at organizations and there's reasons why people leave. And they're often for their own personal reasons. And so understanding, what led them to leave and why to leave, it goes back to, are their values going to be similar to yours, and do they have the skills that you need for your job? I was the same way. I changed jobs every 2 years when I worked for an organization because I didn't feel fulfilled. There wasn't enough projects. Hence, now I'm a consultant. I have all the projects that I want, and it's awesome. That's why me too, Kate. This is the longest I've been in an employer, because I feel fulfilled in the work. I'm overworked. Well, I shouldn't. Yeah, that's true. But then again, I'd rather be overworked than underworked. So that's, again, you stay longer where the feeling matches your values and matches your skills.
Yeah. And I appreciate it too, the conversation, like to the comment that Teresa said, right? The idea of owning your story. I feel like the other conversation that I have pretty regularly are people who are going through transition or thinking about how they're going to show up for an interview, and being able to confidently speak to the longevity and their loyalty story, right? And so I recognize too that there's that conversation around owning it and feeling comfortable telling it is oftentimes the advice I give to people that are looking for their next job, is really being in a place that you own and feel comfortable about the why, and that you have really clear answers as to the why, and that you feel comfortable, even if it is a riff, as to the why, right? There needs to be an idea as to explaining it. I do think that there was a conversation, and Sarah, thank you for bringing it back up, is the generational piece of it as well. I think this has been brought out in a couple of different articles along the way, is this conversation around, again, I know my audience. I'm speaking to my audience here, that where many of us are probably in that Gen Xer space. But are we going to see this shift? And are you guys seeing anything when we're thinking future of work? When I think of the topic for today, have you guys seen anything in terms of, or you've read anything that's talking about kind of the way future generations are seeing loyalty play out? And I feel like I've heard topics on this, but I don't know if I have a real clear, definitive answer. Either of you have any point of view here?
No.
Just more so from a total rewards perspective. I mean, having to do total reward studies just to make sure you're speaking to all generations, and that's tough when you sometimes have limited resources, limited, what you can invest in. But making sure you're offering plans that speaks to your whole population is going to be significant. Naturally, the younger population is more the career development, career planning, things like that. So a lot of clients are asking for deeper career paths to be developed is a big trend I've seen in the last just 6 to 12 months, where you develop very specific paths for your organization so people know what to do. And that is speaking directly because of the younger population coming in. That's one trend I've definitely seen in the last 12 months.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think it's, oh, go ahead, Kate.
The only thing I would say is, who thinks they know what 10 years looks like from here? Like, I don't think we should, miss the point that an employer doesn't know what 5 years from now looks like. And so it's unfair to ask someone, will you be with us in 5 years? Because we don't know if you'll exist in 5 years. So
Right.
like that demanding that kind of loyalty is misplaced. I think it's because the future is unknowable, and man, sometimes I would really like to know it. But I just don't think we should be demanding that when we're looking at hiring someone, because I think it's unfair.
Yeah, I think it's fair. I think that's a fair statement. And I think it's showing up too. I think that Sarah mentioned it with the idea of that they're seeing how long, what does 2 years look like, right? The idea of what is 5 years. I mean, the idea of being able to predict, we've all now lived in a world where we couldn't have predicted the last 5 years. So why would we have
Right.
assumed we'd be in any position to be able to predict what the next 5 minutes are going to be, let alone the next 5 years? I feel like there's been too
Exactly.
much change happening. The only thing I would add from an HR lens is I keep thinking about how the speed of onboarding needs to sort of follow in suit with it. And we need to make sure that we're really
Oh,
why I hope somebody is taking screenshots of all of the times I lock up so that I can like have a really funny flip reel for today's event.
I'm sure that was a
Fine.
really good point. I
I'm
don't
sure it was.
Yeah.
The world, again, I can't predict the next, that's what it was doing. I can't predict the next 5 minutes. I can't even predict if my internet will hold. So there's exactly the answer. Gosh darn it. All right. Thank you both. Thank you all for those of you that have participated and shared and responded to all of our crazy questions. I want to sort of call out a couple things to look forward to, short-term, long-term. So as I mentioned, Lakeside is both the sponsor of Radiate People as well as my employer. We are hosting an event on the end of the month, so February 27th. So I have to, what today, wait, day is it today? In 10 days. No pressure. I called the solo journey. And for those of you that haven't heard about it yet, like I said, Radiate People is committed to sort of providing community for those that have made the decision to be an independent consultant. What the solo journey is really to sort of get ahead and offer those tactical, tangible resources and stories around what it is to live the life of a solopreneur. And so amazing series of speakers. It's a half-day event held at Coco, 8 to noon. Would love to have you there. I will send the information in the follow-up materials as well. Look at this dialogue. I feel like I'm going to go back and spend the next half hour just reading the chat thread. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't also tell you that we're not done with Lakeside Chats. We've got a whole series. I'm working on the whole 2026 series. I'm really excited. The March 17th event, so a month from today, literally a month from today. It's always the February weird 17th. Judy Goldberg is going to be on. Judy is maybe not known to many of you here in Minnesota, because I know we've got bringing a big portion of people from Minnesota, but Judy wrote the series called the Wonder Shift, and we're going to talk about change and talking about how we can manage through change with the lens of intention. She's got some really great stories to tell, and I'm excited about having a new face here for the Lakeside. Not that I don't love having my old faces on here as well. So this has been great. Thank you all for being here. We are right at the top of the hour. Thank you for coming, Kate, David. I could do this every day. I could just.
Thank you. Have a lovely day, everybody.
Thanks,
Yes, I love it.
everyone. Thank you for
Thank
dealing
you.
with my internet. Bye, guys.
Bye.